tell us briefly how you see Intellgate, because it is at the core and it is one of the most controversial parts of your book, and it's relevant, I think, as we wait for the Mueller report, as we see what unfolds.
Well, in the book Intellgate, I've obviously made a play on words, from Russiagate to Intelligencegate. And I'll tell you how I came on this. You all know this so-called Steele dossier, right? You all have heard about it. This former British, if he is really former, intelligence agent who was posted in Moscow and had a big Russia profile over the years, was hired, it said, to put together negative things about Trump's relationship with Russia. So because I have some Russian expertise, I began to look into this. And the first thing I discovered, the document's about 30 or 40 pages long. There are so many mistakes in it that it doesn't seem like the mistakes that Russian intelligence would make. I mean, they had people alive who were dead and people who were in positions that they hadn't held. But anybody can make a mistake like that. But I did come to the conclusion that there was nothing in this document that suggested it had come from Russian sources, because that was Steele's claim, that he had this network who were forming. Then I asked myself another question. If Putin is really the horrible master of, bloodthirsty, ruthless master of the Kremlin he's said to be, I don't think he is, how could anybody in the Kremlin, knowing, allegedly, that Putin favored Trump in the election, allegedly, I'm actually not sure that's true either, there's a question mark. How could any ranking intelligence officials in or around the Kremlin defy Putin and abet an anti-Trump cause in America? They were putting certainly their careers and their families' well-being at risk. So then we were told by the guy who hired Steele that Steele had paid these people. So I thought, well, maybe Russians need money. But then later Simpson, the guy who hired Steele, testified to Congress that Steele hadn't been paid and none of his sources had been paid. So I was left with a document, and by the way, this is the document on which our own intelligence sources base their own so-called assessment, that this document had little validity for a working historian. And we often get documents written at a certain period, either published or in an archive. We can't just accept the document because it's a document. You or I can write a document tonight and dump it in an archive, and some historian wouldn't know we were kidding. It'll have authenticity. I couldn't find any authenticity to this Steele dossier. And then when you trace its history, the hands of John Brennan and British intelligence were all over the origins, not only of the document, of Steele himself. So I began to ask, what role did our intelligence services play in these allegations that Trump was a kind of puppet of the Kremlin? And let me end by saying that I would never make this as a flat statement. It's a question. And I think I think I titled the thing Intellgate or Russiagate, with a question mark. But since nobody was asking the question, nobody had done the legwork, I thought it very important to raise the question. And all I can say is that since then, the behavior of the FBI and the CIA have become, to say the least, more and more peculiar as we learn more things about what the FBI was doing. So many people have been fired from the FBI for one reason or another. Last point about history. So Katrina, being much younger than myself, nonetheless remembers, as the keeper of the liberal progressive flame in America, there was a time, her lifetime too, when liberals and progressives were deeply suspicious of the American intelligence agencies.
Including the FBI.
Including the FBI, yeah.
So you all sitting out there remember this. Even if we think it to be true, we have to ask, how did it happen that liberals and progressives today are embracing the FBI and the CIA in their war against Trump? That's a historical question. How do we get from there to here? One explanation is the loathing for Trump. I understand that. But I don't think it's explanation enough. I mean, liberals have come a long way from wanting, the Church Committee, from wanting to expose abuses. I mean, the CIA was running assassination plots. We learned this in the church. You covered this at church committee, right? Well, maybe you can say something about it. My memory's not that great, but we've come a very, very long way as a kind of mainstream, liberal, enlightened, democratic society from having a healthy skepticism about what our intelligence services were doing to embracing them as fonts of wisdom about Trump. I mean, does loathing for Trump justify that transformation? And when Trump's gone, the intelligence services will still be here.